So, instead of me typing out a book, because that's what I tend to do sometimes, it's just easier for me to do this video, make it short and sweet and quick. Um, and not only that, but when I learn stuff, I learn it better through hearing it and seeing it better than I do reading it. So, anyways, I always have people like reaching out to me, asking me certain questions, and a lot of it is related around PTSD, CPTSD, trauma, self-care coping skills. Um, so, anyways, trauma is one thing that I was going to talk about in this clip. I'm going to make another clip here in a minute on coping skills. But it's just going to be easier for me to do this and tell people, hey, go look at my clip. Especially if I'm doing other jobs to where I just can't answer the question. So, trauma is anything that happens that like causes issues, and sometimes trauma happens and we may not see it as trauma at the time, um, but later on down the road we realize, hey, this is trauma. It has shaped my beliefs or shaped something into a negative pattern or behavior. We have to take ownership and acknowledge it and try to change that behavior. And certain things can trigger um, back trauma, which is the PTSD. Um, so, one of the questions I had 2 nights ago is, can death cause like PTSD? They had something to happen and it kind of set off a trigger. My answer is yes. And I explained to them even things that we may not see as trauma can be trauma. Trauma is not only being like rape or molestation or being beaten or being in war or anything, it's all of that stuff, but it can be a car wreck. It can be the feeling of abandonment. It can be just different things that impact you in to a negative way. Um, One example that I give is, say you have 2 kids about the same age, and one has a disability or a sickness, and so you and your spouse or whoever are the guardians are going to, of course, pay more attention to the one who is sick, the one who has injury or health issues. Well, the one that's healthy is going to feel neglected and abandoned because they're not getting that same attention. Um, and then say if the child that's sick, you have to leave in the hospital or something to go take care of other stuff, they could feel abandoned. So, you know, and it could even be as a child getting lost in like a grocery store, or a parent accidentally forgetting you at a store. Um, you know, Parent forgot about me, abandonment. And it may not seem like nothing, but later on, it comes up. Um, you know, and you might be like, well, I'll never leave my child. You never know what's going on in the parent's head. Parents do the best that they can do, I do believe. And we have to give them that grace that, they did the best that they could do with what they knew at that time. Unless they are hurting you in an abusive way. And a lot of times it's because their childhood, they were abused, but as an adult, it's our responsibility to take ownership of our crap that we were handed and to learn how to handle things the correct way. Um, it's like if you've got an angry issue and you don't know why you snap at people so quick, it's usually due to trauma. You put up a wall in defense, and you know, you go about it that way. But when it comes to trauma, you've got to acknowledge it. You got to give it the acknowledgement that it deserves. If you go around and you're like, well, my trauma was not as bad as this person's trauma. Trauma is not comparable. Trauma is not comparable at all. Um, I've had people be like, you've been through a lot of trauma. My trauma is nowhere near yours. Well, you're dismissing your trauma by saying that. Your trauma is your trauma. My trauma is my trauma. Um, and everybody has a story. Everybody's had traumatic times, and it could be even a loss of a job is traumatic. Especially when it's your whole livelihood and you've got kids, whatnot. That's traumatic. And if you don't give that credit of, hey, yes, I lost this job because of this or this reason, whether it was wrong or right, um, that's trauma because you're possibly looking at losing everything that you've ever worked for. So when you notice that something gives you anxiety, try to figure out why. Like, does something feel familiar even though it's not familiar? Like, another example would be, for me, like one of my triggers was the smell of pot. Um, as a child, there was a lot of it growing up. There was a lot of trauma around pot because of the smell and stuff. And, there's been a couple of situations where I wasn't expecting the smell of pot and it caught me off guard and it kind of set me back, um, to when I was a child. And I really had to work on that. So if something feels familiar, you can't treat it the same way that you would have treated it normally, because you don't know if the outcome's going to be the same, or if different people have different situations, um, and different people handle things differently. Me, I try to go in and learn. I would try to learn from my mistakes, and I try to learn how to handle things differently. You know, um, and that goes back to self care and coping skills. When you do start having trauma issues, um, and what coping skill might have worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. Um, may not even work today. Um, you know, last year I was going through a lot of stuff, and I was facing a lot of like trauma stuff, things that I didn't realize was trauma, but it was trauma. Like my ex-wife continuously being suicidal and trying to OD. Um, she tried to OD 3 times during our marriage, and first 2 times I called 911, and that was even more traumatic. The last time I just tricked her into getting in my car and taking her to the ER. Um, because and that's traumatic because if you're looking at losing somebody that you care about, and suicide is also a form of abandonment, and a lot of my life has been, dealing with abandonment, but it all started whenever I was like 3 months old when my dad signed his rights away. Um, and then my mom marrying and moving off. And I was back and forth between my mom and my grandmother and great grandmother. And then at 8, my great grandmother, who was my best friend at the time, you know, passed away. And, so all of that is different kinds of trauma. And I never learned how to grieve different things. And I've learned over the last year, really and truly, how to grieve things. And that's a total different subject as far as not giving yourself permission to feel through the things, And a lot of people avoid facing their trauma by saying, hey, my trauma's not as bad as this person's. Um, why do you always have to look to the past, or why why are you living in the past? And it's not really living in the past. It is because you can't fix the past, but it is giving it acknowledgement. It's being like, this is why I put my walls up. This is why I respond to things the way that I do. And you start to heal those traumas. And as you start to heal those traumas, you are happier, you feel more confident, you have more peace than any ever. Like, I can't tell you ever a moment in my life that I've ever been as happy as I am, that I feel as confident as I do, and I have the peace that I do. And peace is not a outwardly thing. It's not what's going on the outside of you. It's what's going on in the inside of you. Like right now, there could be a shooting outside, which has happened a couple of times here since I've been here in December. Um, I'm still at peace with whatever's going on, like within myself. Like, it's not gonna cause disruption within myself. Um, where before it would cause trauma triggers and anxiety and stuff, and I don't have that issue anymore. Um, there's a lot of people that take mental meds for chemical imbalances and stuff like that. I don't have the chemical imbalance thing going on. But I was on a lot of mental meds to kind of numb the situations until I could get to a better place to face it. And so it caused a chemical imbalance with some other meds that I started taking, and I stopped all my mental meds. Um, I do not recommend that for just anybody, especially if you've got chemical imbalances going on. But it helped me really face my traumas and face my fears and just take care of the things that I need to take care of. But yes, trauma can be the littlest thing that you wouldn't even think is trauma. Um, if it causes you issues, it causes you anxiety, then it's trauma. And there's been times that I had caused people trauma and didn't mean to. Like when I was suicidal, but it was due to chemical imbalances and stuff, and I couldn't figure out why I was suicidal. Um, Plus, I was having other stress issues, like going through a divorce, financial struggles. Um, there was a lot going on, and then the chemical imbalance just kind of threw it off. But once I realized what was going on, then I was all good. Um, it's definitely the body, the brain, the way that things work are absolutely amazing, but scary at times. And the chemical thing, it also makes me wonder how many, um, especially women, going through menopause and stuff, when they go through menopause and they're on mental meds and they get suicidal, the first thing that the doctor does is up the meds. They don't take them off the meds and try to figure out, do we need to do medicine change, or do they need medicine? Because chemicals in your body, the way the hormones and stuff, act and stuff, does different things. And I kind of want to go into a study on that, of women through menopause and hormones and stuff, and the way that antidepressants make them react. Especially since I had my issue with my chemical imbalance back in 2019. I think there's some kind of correlation because I know a lot of middle-aged women who should be going through menopause get really suicidal. They end up in the hospital, doctors up their meds, and then they still end up dying from suicide. Um, but anyways, that's technical stuff. I'll do another video here shortly on coping skills. Um, we are responsible of our own selves. We can't control the way that trauma is handed to us, but we can change the way that we face trauma, the way that we handle trauma, and the way that we learn from trauma. So, y'all have a good one.